Hello Infiniteers, and welcome back for our next episode of Toy Box Tutorials. So far I have set up a bridge across this gap, and I've also set up a button casing to extend the bridge. But I don't want this button to become available until the player fights through some enemies down here on the lower level and reaches a control that will activate the button up there. And the control that I want to use for this is the hang bar, which is the topic for today's lesson. This hang bar is a Creativi-toy in Disney Infinity 3.0 that is unlocked with the inside-out playset. You just place the playset piece on the base to unlock it, and then you purchase it in the toy store for 500 sparks. And once you purchase it, it can be found in the Gameplay Toys drawer here. And I'm going to place this button right here between these two lights. Now this is a new input control that is similar to the button or the trigger, but instead of pushing it or stepping on it, you jump on it to hang on it and pull it down. So like that. And it's a pretty simple control, but I don't see people using it much. Probably because it is not located with the rest of the Creativi-toys, and the developers never made an official tutorial for this toy to call attention to it, and so this is why I wanted to do a tutorial for it. So as we look at the logic menu for this, the first thing you'll notice is there are no properties. Again, this is a pretty simple toy, but it does have some trigger signals. So under new logic connection, there are two signals this toy will broadcast. Pulled down is when the player jumps on the bar and pulls it all the way to the bottom. When you reach the bottom, that's when it broadcasts the pull down signal. And when you let go of the hang bar and the hang bar moves all the way back to the top position, then it will broadcast returned to top. So if you want to know when the player lets go, or if you want to know when they've pulled it down, and have things happen in response to either of those, these are the two signals that you use to do that. And the other thing I will point out, if we try to hook a button or any other logic toy up to this control, what you're going to notice is you can't do it. So there are no behaviors for this toy. So I'll cancel out of that. It's not quite like the button where you can use one button to invoke this button and everything that the button would do if you pressed it. Alright, so what I want to have this do in my toy box is when the player pulls the bar down, we want to open the button casing up so the player can use it. Now the problem you're going to run into with the hang bar most often is when the player goes to use this, unless you can somehow turn the camera to see what it does, you're not going to know what this toy does. And you'll notice even with the camera turned, the game automatically wants to pull the camera around behind the player. So most of the time when you use a hang bar, you're not going to see what it does unless you place one like out here in the open or something. Perhaps right on the edge of something like this, where they can see beyond it and see what it does. But most of the time, that's not how you're going to want to use the hang bar. So because of this, because when the player pulls this down and they can't see what it does, most of the time you're going to want to use a camera or something to show them what it does. And so that's what I'm going to do up here. I want to show you how you can make that happen. So we're going to use a target camera. And we're going to focus in on that button. And I'm going to use a locator to orient the camera and point it where I want the thing to look. And we'll hook up the camera to the locator. I put the locator right behind that button so that the camera will make sure to include that button casing in the field of view. Under Properties, we're going to use Define Duration, and I think probably 4 seconds will be enough. Glow through, we can turn that off. Camera target will be the connected locator. Alright, so the first thing we'll do with our hang bar is a new logic connection. When this is pulled down, we're going to activate our camera. This will turn the camera on for 4 seconds and then turn it off. And then we want to open the button casing. And I could connect this directly up to the button casing, but I think by the time the camera activates and the player can see where it's pointing, this will already be halfway open, if not already open. And so what we're going to use, just to kind of make sure the player can see what it does, is we're going to put a time delayer in between the hang bar and the action button. Because again, we just want to make sure the player sees it. So I want to give a second for the camera to take over and for the player to realize what it's looking at. So by default, this is 1 second. So on the on the hang bar, a new logic connection, when pulled down, will start the delay. And on the time delayer, a new logic connection, when that delay is completed, then we'll come up here and activate our button. Alright, so let's see how that works. So we fight our way through all the enemies, which we'll put in a future video. Mickey jumps up. Okay, so the camera switched. You can see the button opened, and we had plenty of time on the camera to see that. So now the player knows exactly what that button did, and they can make their way up the ramp. I thought I could super jump that, but Mickey's super jump isn't the greatest. It's not as high as some of the other characters. But anyway, the player pulls the hang bar, and then when they get up here, now the button's available and they can push it and extend the bridge. So that's all there is to the hang bar. It's a simple control, but it gives you another way for the player to activate things in your toy box. Next time, we're going to talk about sidekicks and some of the sidekick toys that we have not covered yet. And we're going to use those toys to set up a puzzle that only the player's sidekick can solve. You won't want to miss that, so be sure to subscribe to my channel before you go. And if you found this tutorial helpful, please hit the like button and leave a comment to let me know. That's all for me today. Thank you for watching and have a great weekend.